That would be. So I think.
Welcome back from that CEAT strategic timeout. And I've got with me from the famous cricket podcast, Jack Hope. Jack, welcome to the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast.
That's quite the billing. I don't know if famous is quite right. We're at 5,000 random subscribers from the internet. I don't think makes anyone famous, but it's flattering nonetheless. Thanks, DJ.
You're also top 3 in India with with your podcast. So congratulations on that. It's amazing. How did you guys start with your cricket podcast?
It's a good question. We the actual story is that we used to do a fantasy football podcast, which was more of a sketch show than an actual serious podcast, and we wrapped that up because nobody listened to it and decided we'd do a cricket one in 2019, just before the 2019 IPL actually, and then we're not really sure why, but people started listening to it, and we've been on more or less an upward trajectory ever since.
Oh, it's been amazing. You guys are doing a fantastic job, but you're here to talk to us about the IPL 2021, which you guys are doing a great job covering as well. I think you're doing daily podcasts, which genuinely we tip our hats to you guys for doing a daily pod on the IPL. Well done. So we're here to talk about the game that just took place on Sunday, which is the KKR versus the Sunrisers Hyderabad. Jack, a little bit of an odd game, do you think? 187 plays, 177. We saw some great batting from Nitish Rana and Rahul Tripathi, two uncapped players who got 50s. Nitish got 80 and Rahul Tripathi got 53. But not very much else from the rest of the KKR lineup that batted first. So what did you make of that batting effort from the KKR, which sort of faded towards the back as well?
So I actually thought it was a pretty good display. I think it was a bit of a surprise to me where the runs came from. I've been an admirer of Rahul Tripathi in the past. Didn't necessarily think Nitish Rana would be the other guy to back him up though. It did fade a little bit in the middle, I thought, or the late middle. But then Dinesh Karthik came in with a 22 off 9 balls, and I thought propelled KKR to a pretty strong target on a wicket which wasn't brilliant to bat on. It wasn't quite. I mean, the commentators for both games at Chennai have sort of said 150 is par here, and in both games they've been proven to be quite wrong. But I didn't think. I did think that that KKR probably scored 15, 20 more than par. So overall a good batting performance, I reckon.
And what did you make of Sunil Narayan being left out of that 11 for the KKR? He's been such a massive player for them over the years. Is this the end of the road for him?
I fear that it might be. I don't think there's a role for him as an opening batter in the IPL anymore. I think he's been figured out to some extent with express pace bowling. And as a friend of our podcast, Dan Weston, has researched, basically, when he does open the batting, KKR tend to score fewer runs because later in the innings they've sacrificed the possibility of having Narayan come in and hit the ball around. If he's not going to be an effective batter, then he has to be really good with the ball. And we're talking like 2016, 17 Narayan with the ball. And he hasn't been. He wasn't last year. He wasn't the year before. And then you have the issue of his bowling action. And, you bundle a questionable action, a poor economy rate, and an ineffective batter together, and you have somebody that needs to be dropped from your 11, particularly if they're one of your overseas players.
Right, and they've got an able replacement, obviously, in Shakib Al Hassan. Now, they got to 187 with the bat, and I mean, that was a pretty stiff target. The Sunrisers Hyderabad started off pretty poorly, losing both their openers, one of which was David Warner. And Riddhiman Saha, both were gone. They were 11 for 2. At that stage, did you think the game was over with Warner back in the pavilion?
I don't think any T20 game is over with Johnny Bairstow at the crease. I think he was the crucial wicket to take. However, the game was the fat lady was warming up her voice at that point, because I think really Johnny Bairstow scoring the bulk of the runs was the only path to victory. And when he fell, what was it, in the 12th over? I don't think that Manish Pandey has it in his locker, as they'd say in English football, to be the anchor batter that reaches that higher strike rate later in his innings, and can maybe, or could have maybe propelled SRH to that target, whereas Bairstow might have been able to do that. The other problem, obviously, is that tactically they made some very strange decisions in terms of who they sent in at what point in the last 5, 10, or 5, 6, 7 overs of that innings.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that, because we've talked about it on your show, which is up on YouTube, intensively, on the decision to promote Abdul Samad, Vijay Shankar and Mohammad Nabi over the big hitting Abdul Samad when you need basically 4 runs of ball at that stage. And Samad obviously comes and hits his first ball for 6, and everyone's just like, this is what we were telling you. Why the hell didn't you do it? So talk us through those tactics. What were they thinking?
Well, I can't talk you through those tactics because I don't know what they're thinking. Is the issue there? I did do a little bit of research on some basic strike rate stats. Vijay Shankar's strike rate is 128. So Abdul Samad is 175, I think. So there's already quite a significant difference. So that's half a run a ball difference, which is huge in a game when you needed 50 off 20. Then on top of that, you have Rashid Khan sitting on the bench. I don't think he even came out at all, did he, Rashid Khan? Another guy who, he's not there for a long time, but he can be there for a good time. And if you're gonna chase 50 off 20 balls, you're gonna need a lot of luck to begin with, but you're also gonna need guys who hit sixes. And Rashid Khan can hit sixes. So really bizarre, basically, section. I can only assume that they had a pre-prepared batting lineup and had effectively agreed at a team planning meeting that at least for the first game they weren't going to go away for that.
So obviously the SRH fell short by 10 runs. Manish Pandey scored 61 of 44, including a last ball 6, to take his strike rate to 137, which was slightly above Bairstow as well. But I mean, did the rest of the team fail to kind of rescue Pandey in a way, did you think? Because it goes back to the debate we've often had. Do anchors actually have a place in T20 cricket? Someone like KL Rahul or Shubman Gill or Manish Pandey, should they be allowed to bat at that rate in a T20 game, especially if the others aren't being able to hit the ball over the boundary?
Well, that's the dual problem they have, I think. So anchors, they do have a role in that when you play on tricky surfaces, having a batter who has different ways of scoring runs can be useful to get you to a good score or to chase down a middling score. They're also, good anchors are also useful because they can see, once they face 30 or 40 balls, often their strike rate accelerates significantly, but the rate of dismissal doesn't. Kohli is the prime example of this. He's the gold standard of anchors, if you want to use the marketing phrase for the Safari car. Kohli, in his first 40 balls is a bit of a detriment to a T20 team. But after that, he scores about 200, a strike rate of about 200. Best in the world.
So you just lost about 5,000 subscribers and then added 20,000 subscribers by calling him the best in the world.
Well, that's the dynamic you have with a good anchor, that they can single-handedly win you cricket matches. It's just 3 out of 4 times they're going to be detrimental to your potential overall score. And that's the point you're making about other players having to pick up the slack. They do. That's the trade-off you make. You need other guys who can hit around them. I don't know if that SRH team have got those other guys, which puts them in a little bit of a difficult spot, because at this point you can't just magic some hitters up. You kind of have to go with what you've got and maybe make people play different roles. I don't know. What do you think? Can Manish Pandey play any quicker? I mean, overall, his raw strike rate stats probably don't look that bad in this game. It just, in a game where you lose by 10 runs and you've batted basically the whole innings, it looks bad.
Yeah, and it's exactly that. I mean, if Bairstow and Warner open the batting and they go at 150, he can come in and bat three. But if you've got Saha opening the batting, who he didn't score any runs today, but if you've got him opening the batting, you haven't got Kane Williamson in the team who can literally accelerate from nowhere. He can anchor the innings. He can smash it everywhere. So I think they need to find a way, and it goes back to what their combination needs to be. That their best four overseas. Can they find a way of fitting Bairstow, Warner, and Williamson into this team? And I think the answer to that is yes, because Rashid will be their other overseas. And the answer, and I know you guys don't like the player, and Varun on our podcast hates him as well. I wouldn't say hates, I'm putting words in his mouth, but doesn't enjoy him that much. It's Kedar Jadhav. That's the answer. He can bowl some sidearm, underarm spin under the wicket, and he can bat. He's experienced and he's Indian, so he doesn't eat up an overseas slot. So, and I actually thought that was the reason they'd gone for him at the auction, to kind of add experience to that middle order and allow them to play their the top three being overseas players, being Bairstow, Warner, and Williamson, which they haven't obviously done. So interesting. Last question on this before we wrap, and we can do the plug and stuff. But um, do you see the Sunrisers Hyderabad making the playoffs? Because I know every one of us on our podcast have predicted these guys going through. They've made it for a number of years. They won the championship in 2016. I don't enjoy their brand of cricket personally, but they're effective. So, do you think they're going through this year as well, based on their bowl first, restrict the opposition, and then knock the runs off with Warner doing the bulk of the scoring?
I think overall they probably will. Um, I think I think their bowling's just too strong. They should, in theory, have 12 banker overs out of Rashid Khan, Bhuvneshwar Kumar, and Natarajan, and who they pick around that. If they can get their matchups right, they should regularly be able to keep teams below 160, and they have the personnel to chase 160 scores pretty regularly. I mean, we've had a go at Manish Pandey a little bit today, but if that scores 160, he's played virtually the perfect innings. So will they basically? You need to win about 8 games, don't you, to make the playoffs or to guarantee the playoffs? Will they win 8 of their last 13? I think there's a really good chance that they will pull that off. So yes, I'd still be quite hopeful for them.
Excellent. So, Jack, now's the time. Tell our listeners where they can find the cricket podcast.
You can find us on Twitter at The Cricket Pod. You can find us on the internet, thecricketpod.com, or just search The Cricket Podcast on Spotify or Apple or YouTube. We're doing particularly well on YouTube at the moment. And you said we were doing daily shows. I think we'll slacken off slightly as the tournament carries on, because we just don't quite have the stamina for that. But we're doing regular sort of live post-match shows over on YouTube. So get involved there would be my suggestion.
I can definitely tell you, I listen to these guys whenever they put a podcast out, and it's highly recommended. Jack, it has been a pleasure having you on the show, and we'll hope to have you back soon. Thank you so much for joining us.
Cheers, DJ. Thanks. Pleasure.